Hey Heather, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. I'm so
Oh,
excited.
great.
Sorry that the last time that I tried to interview you, there was just like this massive technical problem. I'm sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. I'm just going to do audio today, if that's okay.
Yeah, no worries at all. No worries at all.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Perfect.
So I'm really excited to talk to you about your new album. It's kind of crazy because I remember when my Mind Makes Noises came out and was like 16, 15 years old. I remember seeing you at like Reading and Leeds Festival, like my
Oh,
first
really? How old are you now?
nearly 20, almost 20.
Oh, wow.
But it's just like I
God.
feel like me and like so many other people have kind of like grown up listening to you guys sort of.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Yeah, so
Have you listened to the new album?
I have. Yeah. It's so
Do you
good.
like it?
I do. I really, really like it. I feel like it's in quite a different direction to the first one. I feel like you can definitely tell there's some different influences sort of going on there. But I'm gonna
Yeah,
ask
it's
you,
not exactly like the 80s influence record.
yeah, I'm gonna ask you about all of that stuff in a little bit. But I want to know a little bit about how this new album is kind of like the next sort of step in your evolution as a band, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I just sort of, I had creative freedom to just go off and write whatever songs that I wanted to write, really. And the 80s era has it's never been particularly like my favorite. I do like 80s music, but it's never been like like a genre that I felt very passionate about. So it was really nice for me to sort of be able to write a record that was more alternative and more stripped back, and obviously it has similar aspects to the first record because I you know I wrote the songs on the first record too, but I think it's the instrumentation that really sort of is drastically different this time around. But I didn't want to write the same record again either. I knew that we sort of had to evolve and we had to develop, and I wanted to create an album that was a lot more vulnerable and alternative.
Yeah, definitely. I do hear that for sure when listening to the new album and things. I was wondering as well, like, did you sort of have that second album pressure that a lot of bands seem to have, where they have this brilliant like breakout record and then they're faced with, okay, where do we go from here?
No, not really, to be honest. I was aware of that, but I never really let those kind of things affect me or get to me too much or put pressure on my shoulders. I write music and I do music because it's just something that I adore and love. So I was always going to write these songs, and if people sort of connect with it, then that is amazing. But it doesn't really, it didn't really matter to me what sort of pressure that the outside people were sort of putting upon me, because I just do music because I fucking love music.
Nice one. Yeah, I feel that. So, where were you at in your life then when you were writing these songs that are on this album and stuff? So, what kind of, I guess, era of your life on a personal level does it represent?
It was sort of the start of me wanting to change and become a better person. I feel like I really neglected that for a long time, and I neglected myself, and I I didn't embrace a lot of parts of me, because I feel like I didn't really get the time to. We were on tour for pretty much like 3 years solid, um, so therefore I didn't really get time to, step away from it all and just be able to work on myself and do normal things. So yeah, this record is very influenced from me growing as a person.
hmm Yeah, and how does the title kind of reflect where your mind was at?
Who am I? I mean, that's the start of me sort of yearning to become a better person and embracing that journey, and sort of realizing that I needed to relook my life and sort of remove a lot of toxic things in my life and replace them with healthier versions. And I had a sort of a mini breakthrough on me realizing that I needed to readjust my life.
Yeah, for sure. So what kind of territories, like in your own words then, do you kind of explore with this new record?
I embrace my own sexuality a lot. I embrace what it's like to be a woman, and I share my experiences of that. I speak about mental health. I criticize society a lot and how it sort of tends to try and box us in and make us the same person, essentially. I also talk about body image and a lot of things that need to be heard through society. I wanted to come back with this second record, and I wanted to have a message that was, ultimately strong, and it was messages that society needs to hear.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely felt like when I was listening to it, like if that kind of record was around like 10 years ago, or when a lot of people were growing up, like it would have really meant a lot to a lot of people, I think, because you cover so much, I feel like, across all those songs. But yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I wanna represent what I feel like is truthful, and I want to be able to criticize things that I feel are essentially unhealthy or need to be sort of rewritten.
Yeah, for sure. So I think it's clear as well from listening to the album, like we were saying earlier on, that the influences behind it have like definitely shifted compared to My Mind Makes Noises. So
Hmm.
tell me a little bit about what you were listening, not just what you were listening to, I guess, but the kinds of like culture, arts, what kind of things were you absorbing and that might have come out into this album?
I was listening to a lot of alternative female artists like Courtney Love and Liz Phair, Avril Lavigne, a lot of powerful women, and Alanis Morissette. So within their sort of songwriting, they're very sort of unapologetic, and they're very raw, and they don't really shy away from anything. And I was really influenced by that. Hence, the Go Down on Me lyric and change. And I wanted to embrace not shying away from things, and sort of thinking about how other people would sort of like judge me, etc. So I took a lot of influence from those artists, and that's what I was sort of really listening to at the moment in that period of time, and just watching a lot of movies and reading books, and I think just sort of being away from the touring environment really sort of enabled me to feel ultimately creative, because
Yeah.
it allowed me time to sort of breathe.
Yeah, and that must have, yeah, I feel like you live in a suspended like kind of reality when you're on tour from like speaking to other bands. I definitely get that feeling from talking to them.
Oh yeah, 100%. You really do. It's sort of detached from reality.
Yeah, for sure. What kind of movies and books and things were you kind of like surrounding yourself with when you were making this album?
I was reading a lot of poetry. Ian Thomas is one of my favorite writers, which is really interesting because I was a fan of his for a long time, and then he kind of became aware of um, me, and that was so cool for me because he started messaging me and he sent me his new book, and that was a really cool experience of me. You sort of being an artist, you sort of are allowed these really cool experiences, but that was definitely up there for me because it was sort of someone that I highly respected, and you know has he had an influence on the album too, because um I was sort of reading his poetry and I was influenced by that.
What's the, I don't actually know Ian Thomas, so you have to like, what's the vibe of what does he write?
He covers a lot of things really. He talks about love, love falling apart, then he talks about mental health, and he has a few books out, and the way he sort of sees things is just ultimately beautiful, and he opens my eyes a lot, and I know that he does this for a lot of his readers, but his mind is just so powerful and interesting, and he can sort of rewire how you look at something.
That's amazing though that you managed to like have like a personal like friendship with him. That's sick.
I know it's really cool.
Yeah, definitely. And I know you guys, like one of the most interesting things about you guys, like for new listeners, is also like how visual you are as a band. How do you feel the
Mm.
visual side of Pale Waves has kind of changed from My Mind Makes Noises up until this new record?
I feel like the vision of what I have has just become a lot more stronger than it was in the first album. I don't think visually it's drastically changed that much, because we've always been quite bold, and we've always been really sort of considerate to the imagery of everything. Um, because I love aesthetics. I love getting dressed up for music videos and playing characters, and I feel like the visual side is just as important as the music side to me. So it's always been sort of um, played a big importance, both sides. I feel like they nicely coexist together for Pale Waves.
hmm Yeah, for sure. Do you feel like you've kind of absorbed any new influences on the visual side that's kind of changed with this album?
Not drastically, no. I feel like I'm still really sort of like influenced by Tim Burton. I've not really changed my look that much or that drastically. We're still kind of slightly um, gothic in a way. I know that drives people insane because they feel like pop music and goth can't exist together. But we stay true to who we are, and
Mhm.
I've dressed like this for years, pretty much all my life. So um, I just stay pretty consistently authentic to myself.
Awesome. Yeah, it's one of the coolest things about like especially on music videos, like they're so fun to watch because like of all the different looks you guys do, like it's just yeah, good. But
Thank you so much. We just did a really like punk video actually for You Don't Own Me,
oh
and
really?
I was wearing a red wig, so that'll be fun.
Oh
Yeah.
nice. Nice. When's that gonna come out?
This month actually, at the end of this month.
Oh sweet, I'm gonna keep an eye out for that. So I know that you guys like between My Mind Makes Noises and this new record, you've kind of like waited well a long time before you've kind of done this follow up. Why did you sort of so was it mainly touring then that kind of got in the way of maybe dropping an album much quicker than that, do you think?
Yeah, it was just the environment. We were trying to write a second record whilst we were on tour, and me and Kira sort of like exhausted one another on a creative side of things, and realized that we both needed to step away from the environment and as well as each other, and just have time apart and sort of create as individuals. And that's what we did on this second record, and I sort of was able to take that time out and just go and sort of write alone. And then that's when the second record just sort of came to life, really. And
hmm
Kira went off, and Kira started producing new artists and sort of really honing in on their own skills and becoming a better producer. So we both sort of like benefited from that time away from one another, and I feel like we both really grew as people too.
hmm Yeah, awesome. And sort of as an extension of that as well, how do you look back on the person who wrote My Mind Makes Noises? Like, what's your relationship like with your previous work? Can you like still stand behind it, or has your feelings towards it like changed over time?
I feel like every songwriter sort of tends to get bored really soon of their own material, and they're constantly chasing the next thing. Like with this record that's about to come out, like I'm ready to move on to the next project already, but I've also like lived with this record for maybe like a year and a half. So with My Mind Makes Noises, I've actually not listened to it in so long, it really does, it's very nostalgic to me, and it does hold a great place in my life. And um, it's been amazing, that record, because it has really sort of influenced a lot of people's lives, like as you said. So I'm really thankful that we were able to do that. And it's a record that I'll obviously hold forever in my heart. But I'm sort of, I've grown as a songwriter and I've grown as a person. So that record right then, in that moment in time, was like perfect for me.
Mhm.
But now I'm sort of, I'm ready to sort of move on and sort of continue to grow as a songwriter. I can still stand behind the record, yeah, especially songs like Call and Drive, those sort of songs that are a lot more meaningful.
Mhm. Yeah,
They
absolutely.
resonate a lot more for me.
Yeah. So in what ways then do you think you've changed as a person and a songwriter, sort of more specifically?
I feel like I've just really grown up, and I've I've removed a lot of, I mean, I've changed a lot of my priorities and my outlook on life in general. I've, I don't require fame or loads of money. I just want to have a fulfilling life, and I want to find happiness within. I've become a lot more spiritual, and I'm trying to remove a lot of materialistic things out of my life, and a lot of toxicity out of my life. I was so young when we were writing My Mind Makes Noises and recording it, and that really works, because I feel like that first album has like a naivety to it, which people find um, comfort in, because I don't know, that I've just changed entirely. I feel completely different, and that 23-year-old me, 23-year-old Heather, feels like a different person in a way. I just want to sort of like give her a hug and say, oh, it'll get better.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But it's all part of life.
Mm, yeah, definitely. It's crazy being able to look back on, like, because you have this album, you have like a record of exactly where you are at in that point of life, which I always find really interesting.
Yeah.
And the same thing
Yeah,
with
it's just
this
like
album.
documenting it, isn't it?
Yeah, so when you like,
Documenting your sort of,
mhm.
go back to it. Yeah, it sort of describes you where you were in that moment in time, and it's very interesting. It sort of takes you back. It's very nostalgic.
Yeah, I suppose that's a great thing about doing what you do, is like you get to look back on that, but also you get to see how much like what you've shared has affected other people as well, which is really cool. But
Oh yeah, I feel like that's the most satisfying thing about making music, how it can impact people and how it can help people. And art's all about comforting and, telling people that you've been through the same experience, or you're going through the same experience, and they're not alone. And that's what makes it really worth it for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And what about Pale Waves as a band as well? So how do you feel like your band have changed as musicians and as people over that period of time?
I feel like we've all, as individuals, grown up and sort of become a lot more comfortable within our own skin, and found things that have brought us more joy. Like, I know Hugo and Kira have really sort of found a lot of love in producing, and they do a lot of that now with other artists. And I know that Charlie has found a new love of DJing. Um, and so we've just sort of like grown up, and we've found love in things that just isn't pale waves, which I think is really healthy. And I found love obviously in writing new songs, but also in like small things like doing yoga and meditation and reading. um so I feel like we've all just sort of like really grown as people in comparison to where we were in this first record, in the mindset of the first record. We sort of let the pressure get to us a bit too much, I feel like, in the first record, and we've sort of really grown up as people and sort of realized what things are truly important.
Yeah, that's nice. And I suppose as well, like it's such a short amount of like time and so much has changed for you guys, that to think about it, it must be kind of like you must feel like proud of yourself, I guess, for seeing how far you've come in such a short space of time.
Yeah, 100%. You know, it's all part of life, sort of developing and evolving and trying to become the best version of yourself as you can. And I feel like you sort of really hit that point in your mid-20s. You've got a few years to go yet, but um maybe you won't hit it. Maybe you'll get your shit together right away. Who knows? But I didn't have my shit together.
I don't know if
And
any of us are so lucky.
yeah, and I got that moment when I was sort of like 25.
Well, it's all to look forward to then.
Yeah, exactly.
I've got a couple more questions for you, and then I'll let you go. I was wondering as well, because obviously you've recorded this album during such a weird time to be alive, and you've had to, as I
Sorry?
understand it, you've had to do a lot of it virtually. Like, what was that like, as
Yeah.
opposed to being able to do it in person?
Well, actually, the recording process, I was actually constantly there physically. It was only Charlie that had to send over some bass parts over the internet. But I was there physically with the producer, and even when the pandemic was, as you know, at its peak at the beginning of the pandemic, I just sort of went into the studio in mask and in gloves, and we sort of continued because we knew that we had to get it finished, and there was no way that I was going to leave this record unfinished.
That's amazing though, that you've still like managed even with
But it
like.
was it was interesting.
hmm Yeah, so did you in sort of
Oh
feel
yeah.
disappointed? I guess maybe disappointed in a way that like you might not have been able to record the album in the way you imagined when you were first writing these songs.
Yeah, the pandemic definitely did strip a bit of life out of recording the record. Um, but I guess everyone was in the same boat and we just had to adapt. And it's sort of like you have to try and take the positive side out of things.
hmm
And we just adjusted to it. And I'm sure next time when I record a third album, I'll be able to do it in the way that I wanted to.
Yeah, it's a good
I
outlook.
try, I try and, yeah, exactly. I tried to take the positives out of things, and I try not to look back and regret anything because you can't go back in time, sadly, and change anything.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And my last question for you is a kind of broader question, but how do you sort of define success for this album?
For this album, I mean, success for me would be for it to just connect with people and for it to make people feel safer and for it to make them feel more comfort and less alone. That would be success for me.
And ever since you've sort of had the time to take stock of everything and stuff, have has your definition of success in a more general sense for Pale Waves changed?
Yeah, I feel like it goes back to, realigning priorities and sort of realizing materialistic things aren't necessarily um the key to happiness. I just sort of I want my music to connect with people, and that's what truly matters to me, and that's what defines success for me.
hmm Okay, perfect. That's everything from me. Yeah, it's been great talking to you. Been great to interview.
Yeah, great. It's been wonderful to chat, and I'm glad you liked the second record.
Yeah, it's great. I'm excited for it to like properly come out so I can really talk to people about it.
Yeah, it's a secret right now.
Yeah, but it's brilliant. Yeah, you should all be really proud of yourself. It's so good.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, you too. Thanks so much, Heather.
No problem. See you later.
We'll see you later.